You think everything is fine, you really honestly believe it. It's not an illusion, not a naive optimism. It's a conclusion based on concrete evidence, on the gentle warmth of daily life. The conquest phase, with its dance of anxiety and uncertainty, its chess game of calculated moves, is behind you, a distant memory. The phase of overwhelming passion, with its almost unbearable intensity that consumes nights and thoughts, has matured and transformed into something calmer, deeper. Now you believe you have reached the final destination that all fairy tales promise: security. You think your relationship has found that comfortable, sunny plateau, that plane of peace after the initial dizzying climb. You have built a life together, brick by brick, a routine that is not synonymous with boredom but with comfort, a set of inside jokes that works like a secret language, a silent language that travels through a glance, capable of communicating whole paragraphs in a fraction of a second. You have settled into what you believe to be the fortress of security, the safe harbor of intimacy. You look at her, on the other side of the room, reading a book under the lamplight, and a feeling of pride and tranquility washes over you. You think, we made it, we're here, the game is over and we won. And then, it happens. Not like a thunderclap or an earthquake which announce their arrival. It happens like a subtle change in the air pressure that precedes a storm, like a hairline almost. Invisible crack in the wall of your fortress. Out of nowhere, she starts doing something that defies all the logic you have built together. A spark of conflict over an absurdly trivial matter. The lid of the butter dish left out of the fridge turns into a raging fire of epic proportions threatening to consume the entire house. A wall of icy silence rises without warning, turning your fluid communication into your own desperate monologue, where every word you say only seems to increase the wall's height and thickness. A veiled criticism, fired with the precision of a sniper during a dinner with friends, hits an insecurity you didn't even know you had, silently exposing and humiliating you. And suddenly, your peaceful life, your safe harbor, transforms into an emotional, mind and unpredictable battlefield. You stand there, in the middle of the living room you decorated together, with the echo of her words in the air, completely paralyzed by a confusion that borders on panic. You ask yourself in an infinite loop, what the hell happened to the woman you thought you knew? What happened to the peace you worked so hard to build? Where, at what exact point, did you go wrong? This feeling of chaos that tightens your chest, this vertigo of walking on eggshells inside your own home. What if I told you that the root cause of this is not an excess of problems between you, but the painful and complete absence of a single mental tool within you? And what if I told you that this crisis is not a symptom that love is dying, but rather a primal, biological, and completely subconscious mechanism of hers? A stress test like engineers perform on a bridge, to verify if the structure of the man she is with is still solid enough to bear the weight of the future. The most shocking part? She doesn't even know she's doing it. It is an instinct older than language itself, a program that runs silently in her deepest operating system, a quality control software that is never uninstalled. In this video, I will guide you through the shadows of this complex dynamic. I will be your mentor through this unknown and frightening territory. I will reveal to you, in meticulous detail, the 3 secret tests that every woman, at some point, applies to her partner. And more importantly, I will give you a stoic manual, a mental navigation map, to pass each one of them. Not through games, manipulation, or cheap tricks that fall apart at the slightest touch, but through the recovery of your most authentic, centered, and unshakable inner strength. Imagine the scene in slow motion. It's a Tuesday night. The day has been long. Work has been stressful. All you crave is a little peace, the decompression zone of your home. And suddenly, the argument explodes. The trigger? Apparently the way you loaded the dishwasher. She says you did it carelessly, that you don't care. You say you were just trying to help. She says your help only makes things worse. From there, the conversation spirals into all the other times you didn't care, in an avalanche of accusations that seems to come from years of accumulated resentment. You are perplexed. 5 minutes ago, you were fine. Now you are being judged as a negligent husband because of a misplaced plate. Your first reaction as a logical and well-intentioned man is to try to solve the problem. You draw your favorite tool, reason. You try to explain that the position of the plates does not affect the washing. Efficiency. You present facts. You build a chronological and irrefutable argument to show that her reaction is disproportionate to your action. You try to be the adult in the situation, the engineer who points out the structural flaw in her logic. And what happens? The storm turns into a Category 5 hurricane. Your rational words are like dry twigs thrown into a bonfire of emotion. The more you try to use logic to put out the emotional fire, the higher it burns. You are trying to play a game of chess in the middle of a tidal wave, not realizing that the rules of the game are different, and the board has already been washed away. This is the first and most common of the tests, the manufactured drama test. And here is the first tool you will apply, perhaps even today, to feel immediate relief and regain control of the situation, or rather, of yourself. The shield of calm indifference. When the drama begins, when the emotional storm forms, you will not enter the hurricane. You will not raise your sword of logic. You will do something much more powerful, something counterintuitive. You will take a deep breath once, twice, feeling the air fill your lungs and the ground beneath your feet. You will anchor yourself in the present. You will look at her not with anger, not with frustration, but with a genuine calm, almost like a scientific observer. And you will say in a quiet, firm voice, devoid of sarcasm, "I see that you're upset, and I understand, but I'm not going to argue in this emotional state. We will resolve absolutely nothing this way. The conversation has become unproductive. Let's talk about this later, when we are both calmer." And here comes the most crucial part, the action that gives weight and truth to your words. After saying this, you turn your back and leave the room. Not aggressively, not slamming the door like a petulant child. Deliberately, calmly, controlled. You don't go to the bedroom to stew over what happened, creating scenarios and arguments. In your head, that would be an internal defeat. Instead, you go to the garage, to your office, to the balcony. You pick up that book you're reading, listen to a song that calms you, do a series of push-ups until you feel your blood pumping and the anger dissipating into physical effort. You actually and effectively do something else. You demonstrate, with irrefutable actions, that your inner peace is non-negotiable and will not be held hostage by her emotional chaos. This is your first step to armoring your mind. It is the first time you refuse to play a game whose only rule is that you lose. But why is this simple technique so devastatingly powerful? Why does it work when all your logical attempts have failed miserably? Because you have just passed, perhaps for the first time in years, a test you didn't even know you were being given. You have changed the power dynamic not over her, but over your own reactions. To understand the depth of this, we need to dive into the ancient and murky waters of human psychology. In the female subconscious mind, which operates with a biological programming forged over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, men are ultimately divided into two single and brutal categories: strong and weak, dominant and submissive, leaders and followers, anchors and leaves in the wind. There is no middle ground in this primal evaluation. There is no sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Every interaction, every response to a stimulus, every word, spoken or unspoken, is a piece of data that feeds this binary classification system. The weak man, in the view of this primal system, is the one who orbits the woman like a moon orbits a planet. He needs her approval to feel validated. He needs her happiness to feel happy. He has a visceral dread of upsetting her, of provoking her discontent. He compromises his values, his boundaries, his very identity, all in the name of keeping the peace. What he doesn't realize is that every time he gives into the drama, every time he apologizes for something he didn't do, every time he sacrifices a piece of himself on the altar of forced harmony, he confirms the deepest suspicion of her subconscious. He is weak. And weakness, to this ancestral instinct focused on survival and security, generates a toxic mixture of pity and contempt. The strong man, on the other hand, is a sun, not a planet. He has his own center of gravity, his own source of light and heat. His boundaries are clear, not out of arrogance, but out of a deep self-respect. He knows who he is and where he is going. He does not fear conflict or her emotions, not because he is insensitive, but because his life, his happiness, and his worth are complete with or without her. His inner peace is his own construction project, a garden he cultivates daily, not a gift she can give or take away at the whim of her mood. And it is here that Stoicism ceases to be an ancient and dusty philosophy and becomes our secret weapon, our operating manual for the male mind. Philosophers like the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world in his time, did not govern by letting themselves be shaken by palace dramas or the opinions of others. He practiced daily what the Stoics call the dichotomy of control, the most fundamental principle of all. He focused obsessively on what he could control, his thoughts, his judgments, his actions, and accepted with serenity what he could not control, the emotions of others, external events, fortune itself. Your center of gravity, your source of power must be within your circle of control. The shield of calm indifference works because it brutally realigns this center of gravity. By refusing to participate in the drama, you communicate without needing a single logical argument. A powerful truth. I am the rock. Your emotional storm is the weather. And the weather, no matter how violent, always passes. The rock remains. Before we detail the other two tests, we need to make a crucial detour. A warning. When hearing about calm indifference, walls, and strength, the untrained mind may confuse these concepts with aggression, coldness, or the toxic alpha male archetype. Nothing could be further from the truth. Stoic strength is not the brute force of the tyrant who shouts and imposes his will through fear. That is the purest demonstration of weakness, of a desperate need to control the external because the internal is chaos. True strength is that of the wise king, not the raging tyrant. The wise king is calm, deliberate. His authority emanates from his integrity, not the volume of his voice. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. His presence is his strength. The tyrant, on the other hand, is reactive, explosive, a slave to his emotions. He confuses intimidation with respect. Therefore, understand, every tool I present here must be used from a center of calm, respect, and self-love, never from anger, contempt, or revenge. The goal is not to punish her, it is to preserve yourself. Now, with this clear distinction, let's move on to the second test. The second test, the silent erosion, the test of boundaries. Remember that friend or colleague of yours? Let's call him Carlos. In the first year of marriage, Carlos was still Carlos. 3 times a week, rain or shine, he went to his jiu-jitsu training. Once a month, he met up with his childhood friends to chat. He had his projects, his hobbies, his territory. The wife, in the first few months, complained occasionally. "You care more about that mat than me," she would say, half jokingly, half seriously. And he would calmly reply, "I love you, but I need this for my well-being, to be a better man and husband." And the boundary was maintained. But constant dripping wears away the stone. The complaints became more frequent, more emotionally charged. The joke turned into emotional blackmail. "If you really loved me, you would stay home with me tonight." And slowly, Carlos began to give in. Jiu-jitsu was cut to 2 times a week to spend more time with her, then to once. Then it was completely abandoned, because marriage is about sacrifice. The meetings with friends became rare, then non-existent. Carlos, in the name of love and peace, gave up every inch of his territory. 2 years later, the result: he gained 15 kilos, lost the sparkle in his eyes, and his wife felt a deep contempt for him, not because of the weight, not because of the absence of friends, but for the abject weakness he demonstrated by completely dissolving into her. He failed the test of erosion. This is the test of boundaries. It doesn't happen in an explosion of drama, but in a series of small concessions, of almost imperceptible retreats. Every time she complains about your hobby, your friends, your time alone to read or think, she is subconsciously knocking on your walls, testing the solidity of your frontiers. The tool to pass this test consistently and definitively is the unnegotiable wall. Imagine yourself as a walled city. Inside these walls are the things that define you, that nourish you, that strengthen you, your mission, your purpose, your self-improvement rituals, be it the gym, reading, meditation, your side project. These things are non-negotiable. This does not mean you should be a selfish tyrant and ignore her. On the contrary, it means you communicate with calm, love, and above all, consistency, that these activities are the pillars that support the man you are. They are the source of your strength, the very same strength that attracted her to you in the first place. No woman falls in love with a man's project, but with a man with a project. When she tests this wall, your response cannot be anger or argument. Your response is consistent action. You go to your training, you meet your friends, you work on your project, and you come back to her as a better, more energized, more present, and more interesting man. You prove, through your results, that your wall does not serve to exclude her, but rather to protect and strengthen the kingdom you both inhabit. The third test, the power vacuum, the test of withdrawal. This is, for many men, the most difficult of all. It is the test of silence, of distance. It is when she pulls away, becomes cold, monosyllabic, stops initiating contact, withholds affection and intimacy. Within an unprepared man, this retreat creates a deafening vacuum, a cold panic. The immediate instinct, fueled by years of social conditioning, is to panic and chase. The flood of messages begins. What happened? Did I do something wrong? Please talk to me. I hate it when you're like this. If the messages don't work, the chase escalates. You send flowers, buy gifts, write long letters, beg for attention and validation. You think you are being romantic, that you are demonstrating the size of your love. But what her subconscious registers is something completely different. Desperation, neediness, fear. It is a man terrified of losing her. And to her most primitive biology, the smell of male fear is not an aphrodisiac. It is a repellent. The Stoic tool to master this test and reverse the power dynamic is the anchor of purpose. Think of your purpose, your life's mission, as a gigantic and heavy anchor. When she pulls away and creates a storm of uncertainty and an emotional vacuum, the weak man is a boat without an anchor, tossed from side to side, desperate. The strong man casts his anchor. When she creates a vacuum, you do not fill it with your desperation. You fill it overwhelmingly with your purpose. Instead of focusing your mental energy on her, imagining what she is thinking, you double down on your mission. You dive into your work, dedicate yourself even more to your training, advance in your side project, read that book you were putting off. You do not ignore her in a resentful or childish way. You remain cordial, but your primary attention, your focus, your vital energy turn to your path, to your own construction. This creates a power paradox that is almost magical in its effects. By not chasing her, you instantly become more attractive. By demonstrating, through actions, that your happiness and your state of mind are not dependent on her attention, you force her to question her own decision to pull away. You anchor your emotional stability in your purpose, not in her validation. And, like a ship that feels the tide changing irreversibly, she will feel the shift in the dynamic. The vacuum she created to test you becomes the space she needs to cross to reach you again. The emotional storm, the silent erosion, the power vacuum. Notice the pattern. These are not games for you to learn to play. They are not manipulation tricks. They are diagnostics. They are a call from the universe, an internal fire alarm, for you to stop seeking strength, validation, and happiness outside of yourself, and start, once and for all, to cultivate them within. This is not about winning a battle against her. The me against her mentality is the very definition of defeat. It is about transcending the battle. It is about becoming a complete, whole man, so filled with his own purpose and self-respect that love and the relationship become an expression of his abundance, not a desperate search to fill his void. It is about becoming a man who does not need her to be happy, but who chooses her every day from a position of fullness and strength. And here is the final paradox, the truth that the Stoics would understand on a cellular level. When you are genuinely ready to lose her, not as a threat, but as a serene acceptance that your life will continue with value and purpose, even without her, it is in that exact moment of inner detachment that she will do everything not to lose you. Your inner strength, your unshakable peace, your serene detachment. That is the most profoundly sexy anchor a man can have. If this message resonated with your search for an armored mind, If you felt the truth of these words in your own experience and are ready to stop failing tests you didn't even know existed, leave an "I have value" in the comments below, not for me, but to seal your own commitment to your transformation. Like this video if it brought you a moment of clarity. And, more importantly, subscribe to the channel to continue receiving the necessary tools to strengthen your journey. Remember, always, strength is not what you do in a crisis situation. It is who you become every day.